Lagandaon, and I am the Health Education Manager here at AiArthritis. And I am here to report back from ACR 2023 with our Go With Us to Conferences program. And today I will be giving a debrief on the session called RA Treatment, Are We Good Enough? So this session is basically talking about RA treatment, how it's evolved, and where we're going with RA treatment. And I thought it was a very interesting session. I think it's really cool to see how science has evolved. And for patients who are already diagnosed, have already been through a lot in their diagnosis journey, a lot of this new science may be fascinating, but may not apply to you anymore. But I have a lot of amazing hope for the patients who are in the process of getting diagnosed or are starting to feel symptoms and signs, that they will have much better disease journeys than we have had, like with the current science and the way that we keep evolving. I think that's the biggest takeaway from here, is that because of patients, AI arthritis patients in the past have gone through so much and have had such high disease burden, it's very nice to be able to be hopeful to all the new treatments. And even they talk about possibly delaying onset or preventing RA. Seeing the science evolve in that way is amazing. So I'm going to go into the session, the first talk. There's two different talks with this particular session. I want to pull up the PowerPoint and go through it because it's a timeline. He goes in like a sequential order of how things have evolved with RA. Okay, so how has RA evolved? Dr. Bryant England. And so he talked about how it basically in the beginning, this is how RA was portrayed. And now this is how RA is portrayed in the media, having people who are professional athletes come back from being diagnosed from RA, or just talking about their experience. Also talking about how with RA, like the biggest issues, mental health, debilitating fatigue, and also the fact of doctors sometimes feel like they're guessing on what is going to be the best treatment for the patient. And so it feels like they're like a game show host, just guessing, when we really want to be scientists and be able to have a very good educated guess, or even a complete correlation to see what treatment might be best for that individual person. So we go into that a little bit more towards the end. This slide in particular was very interesting to me, talking about the evolution of the different therapies that have come along. And of course, it's crazy to see that NSAIDs and steroids and hydroxychloroquine are all the way from the 1930s to 50s and 60s, and coming all the way down to the disease modifying agents that are targeted for very specific people, depending on different biomarkers and all of the different biologics that have come down the pipeline. And see it all in one timeline is really cool. So that was the evolution of the different therapies. And this is the same timeline, but talking about how the strategy of treating RA has changed over time. And the beginning was just talking about symptom control and how can we not prevent the symptoms from happening, but like putting a band-aid on the symptoms. And then it goes all the way down to the different disease modifying agents and combining all of these different treatments and seeing how they go. And now we're even getting to the point where we can treat to target, find a very specific biomarker that might hint at, oh, this patient will be able to may be able to react better to this medication because of that specific biomarker. And also tapering. I think that with our specific AI arthritis diseases is very unique, in which our diseases we're constantly evolving. So, going up and down of those specific medications can help with also other symptoms that you may have because of the medication. So specifically, like we talk about pretty often, is prednisone. So it's good when it does help you get through that initial flare, but the need to taper down is exponential, because the longer that you stay on it on a very high dose, the more of these symptoms that you have. And the treat to target and tapering era is where we're in right now, and getting more biomarkers, doing the research to be able to find how treatment can how we can better target treatment is really going to improve the patient journey and the patient experience and eliminate, hopefully, a lot of the woes that a lot of us went through. Now, a lot of the things that they started to talk about is this pre-R stage where a lot of people may now get diagnosed or with something like mixed connect or undifferentiated connective tissue disease or anything like that. First, that's considered the pre-RA stage, and that's before it's considered completely classified as rheumatoid arthritis. And that might be having to do with the different factors in your blood on whether or not you're serum negative or not. So they're basically trying to say that they want to try to identify more people in this pre-RA stage in order to start treatment early and maybe even being able to delay the onset of full-blown clinical rheumatoid arthritis, or eventually maybe even prevent it if you can further identify it in this pre-RA stage. They talk about the different timelines of the different evolution of treatment guidelines, talking about the use of methotrexate and how with all these studies, it really does seem like methotrexate should be the first defense, the cornerstone of treatment for RA patients. And then instead of switching them to biologic, but adding the biologic on with the methotrexate seems to be the most common thing that works for most patients. He was basically saying that it should be used more as like the main treatment for RA and then adding on the other medication. Yeah, methotrexate as the anchor therapy. That's what he was talking about. I think I said cornerstone, but basically the first line of defense. So this is the current RA treatment guidelines. There's also more talk than ever about the integrative treatment guidelines having to do with specifically diet, exercise, and physical therapy is the main things, but then also things like meditation, yoga, mindfulness, and mental health treatment and therapy and things like that. It's so good to see that there's guidelines coming out, and maybe more of us can have these conversations with our doctors. And that's something that I've never talked to my rheumatologist about, is all these additional therapies. It's for me, it's very, your blood work looks good. How are you feeling? As long as everything is fine, go ahead. But yeah, also I wanted to point out here that I see our other Go With Us contributor, Deb, here as one of the contributors, and also Eileen Davidson. So that's so awesome that their names are on here. And shout out to them for all of the amazing education that they're helping us to give you all too. That is the integrative treatment guidelines. Research is always evolving. One of the amazing things to hear is that remission is becoming more and more increasingly achievable, and defining what remission is has also been a big thing. The spectrum of remission, so whether it be remission, deep remission with no imaging features, or drug-free remission, it's really cool to see that they have a way to score that. And they decreased the requirement to be considered in remission, to add in more people that they thought are kind of in remission, even though those numbers weren't so high. This session seems like it's really hard to continue to put in a little 10-minute video. The speaker did such a great presentation on here, and I just want to shout that out. Like, this was a very comprehensive presentation. This is more of the guidelines for early treatment, or possibly even leading to prevention of RA once you're getting into this pre-RA state. So if you want to take a look at that, really cool things to see. And I think another big takeaway is they were saying to constantly reminding the trainees or all of the fellows that RA is not a joint disease, and that we have to make sure that we are treating the whole person, the systemic disease that they have, not just their joints. And that's what they're showing here, that it has to do with the brain, has to do with the pancreas, the liver, the lungs, the heart, every other different part of the body. So just making sure that's the biggest thing, is to treat the whole person and not just the joints. There are cool things for doctors and other researchers to watch and be able to track disease activity through smartphone apps and smartwatches and things like that. Being able to do that can really help with data and with being able to increase the satisfaction in patient experience. Talks here about precision medicine. They talk specifically about a biomarker that is for RA, multicenter open label RCT, which basically means if B cell, they take a sample of the synovial tissue in your knee, or like basically any of your joints, and there's poor B cell like regeneration in that synovial tissue biopsy, then that leads to a reduced rituximab response. So those are the different things that they're trying to figure out, precision medicine, in order to figure out what treatment might be best for each individual person. And I think, let me look at my notes. The last thing in conclusion that he had to say was, we're not done evolving. Making sure to adapt and really treat the systemic disease / the whole patient. And yeah, that's basically what this first session was about.